Welcome to the 2-Bit Game Club. It's like a book club, but for games. This month's game is Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and it's from the year 1994. So this week's topic is the music of Donkey Kong Country. I'm your host, Liam Gallagher. I'm a composer and bassist. So I know I'm not alone in saying the soundtrack of Donkey Kong Country was a big influence on me. In a story I know I've recounted on this program before, the Donkey Kong Country Exposed VHS exposed my childlike mind to the idea that a games composer was a job that you could have. From that point on, I was on a mission to become a games composer. Well, this is my personal story. Others, I'm sure, will point to the music's catchy melodies, its fun atmosphere, and the sheer technological accomplishment that is the soundtrack to Donkey Kong Country. Beyond that, the games composers have gone on to be games industry heroes in their own right, which has pushed the title into legendary status. The three composers on this game are Eveline Fisher, Robin Beanland, and, with the lion's share of the writing credits, David Wise. David Wise is definitely the most well-known of the three. Mr. Wise began his career as a games composer when the Stamper Brothers received a demo of the Yamaha CX-5 music computer from him. At the time, he was working at a drum store. The Stamper Brothers asked who had programmed the audio sampler, and in finding out that it was Mr. Wise, they offered him a chance to work for their video game company. It used to be that easy. Are you a game developer? What are your own experiences getting started in the industry? Send in your stories to patreon.com/2bitgameclub. As the development of Donkey Kong Country continued, the demo tracks that David Wise had composed were folded into the game, three of which blended together to create the track DK Island Swing. If you listen back to the track, it's not hard to hear where each demo begins and ends. When the game moved into full production, Eveline Fisher and Robin Beanland were brought on to help with additional composing. Notable tracks by Fisher and Beanland are Northern Hemispheres and Funky's Fugue, respectively. To the extent that my research has revealed, Donkey Kong Country was one of the first games, if not the first game, that Eveline Fisher has a credit on. She would compose on Donkey Kong Country 3 and a number of other rare games, including Perfect Dark, where she also voiced the character Joanna Dark. Robin Beanland would go on to be the lead composer for the Killer Instinct series of games. One of the most prominent aspects of the music of Donkey Kong Country is, of course, its memorable melodies and its fun time feels. The composers tapped into a lot of familiar cultural touchstones to create the sonic feeling of Donkey Kong Country. There's plenty of sounds of the Caribbean and Latin America in the game, including the styles of calypso and samba, as well as lots of hand percussion and steel pans. The game also makes use of rock feels, as in The Theme, The Credits Concerto, and Fear Factory. The game touches on dance band swing music a la Sing 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 in DK Island Swing, as well as some other jazz time feels in other numbers. Let's turn our attention to what they were actually composing on. The SNES does not have a particularly powerful sound card. The SNES's sound card is called the S-SMP, and it was designed by Ken Kutaragi and made by Sony. The sound system has 64 kilobytes of RAM and can run 8 simultaneous channels of audio. You don't need to know that much about audio to know that 64 kilobytes is not a lot of space to store all the data for all your audio samples. Today, sample libraries can take up gigabytes, even for just one violin sound. The SNES has a characteristic sound that makes the music on the console distinguishable. Part of what defines the sound is not so much what the SNES can do sonically, but what it can't. Beyond playing basic samples and affecting their playback speed and pitch, the SNES has next to no onboard implementation of many signal processing effects contemporary digital composers think of as being basic. This includes reverb, basic equalization, limiters and compressors, and the use of any filters. In essence, this means that all the compositional heavy lifting has to be done at the sample level before the SNES sound card ever enters the picture. The SNES isn't so much of a music creation tool, but rather it's a rock that we've tricked into singing. The thick and thin of this issue can be understood with those violin samples I talked about before. They take up over a gig of space because they account for all of the thousands of variables that contribute to making an instrument sound really real and not like a chiptune bloop. That the music of Donkey Kong Country sounds so lush is a testament to the deep understanding and artistic vision of the game's composition team, as well as their command of the SNES as a development platform. So let's actually give a few examples of what the NES can do. One tool that the NES sound card does offer is transformation of audio in terms of variable playback. One of the most famous transformations is auto-tune, where a single sample is digitally transformed to change the pitch. It sounds like this. Since there's so little RAM to work with, the sound designers are motivated to make the most use out of each sample. You can hear this in use in the opening moments of DK Island Swing, as the critters of the jungle sing their sweet jungle critter tune. Let's take a look at one more. The SNES has one real audio effect baked into the soundboard. It's a basic delay or echo effect. The use of this effect can be easily heard on the track Fear Factory. It makes the drums sound fat and boomy. However, this effect is very costly to use on the SNES, as it hogs a huge amount of the system's already limited audio RAM. Oh well. In Donkey Kong Country 2, music played a more direct role in gameplay, as well the game had a much expanded soundtrack. Music would be a central theme in the rebooting of the Donkey Kong series when Retro Studios made Donkey Kong Country Returns and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze in the 2010s. In these games, the villains are evil musical instruments who have used their enchanting jungle rhythms to hypnotize the peaceful critters of Kong Island. It just goes to show that the music of the original was impactful enough that it changed the course of development for the rest of the series. Well, thanks for joining me for my Donkey Kong Country listening party. I hope you learned a thing or two. Next episode will be the 2-Bit Game Club meeting episode for Donkey Kong Country, so make sure to send in your thoughts and comments to patreon.com/2bitgameclub. If you do, I'll think on them for the final episode. Until next time, I've been your host of the 2-Bit Game Club, Liam Gallagher.